What's up, everybody? It's Dave from Quarterbash. Today, I want to talk about metal miniatures. Okay, so maybe you're asking, what is he talking about, metal miniatures? Here's the deal. One of the things I fell in love with when I was a little kid, other than Star Wars, because it was the 70s and I was a boy in the 70s, Star Wars was a big deal. But the other thing that I was really in love with was Dungeons and Dragons. But I had a problem. My parents were really religious, and Dungeons and Dragons was considered satanic. You've heard satanic panic? Yeah, a big part of that was Dungeons and Dragons. Churches definitely said that if I played Dungeons and Dragons, I would apparently become a Satan worshiper and murder my family in their sleep, which I wasn't going to do. I liked my family. I really loved the idea of Dungeons and Dragons. What I liked was the artwork. The art in the early Dungeons and Dragons stuff was so incredible to my little mind. The neighbors were allowed to play, and my friend Bruce lived next door. He had all these cool Dungeons and Dragons books, and I'd go over there and look at them, specifically just to look at the art. I wasn't allowed to have it in the house, but I was allowed to, well, they didn't know I was looking at it. They probably would have been unhappy if they knew. But I couldn't just keep my eyes off it. This picture in particular blew my mind. That basically set the standards for what I thought was a cool image for the rest of my life. Couldn't get that stuff out of my head. But I found a way that I could have this stuff in my life even though I wasn't allowed to play the game. And that was, there didn't seem to be any objection for me having the D&D lead figures, because I made models, I built models, army men and things like that were no problem in our house. And lead figures for Dungeons and Dragons were just knights and wizards and things, and that wasn't really a problem. That wasn't something that raised a lot of alarm. So I got a little collection of lead miniatures. I wish I still had them. I really loved them, and all I did was just paint them with model paints and just set them on a shelf and look at them. To this day, the only one that I have left is this. We'll get a close-up on it so you can see it better. This, I believe, was called Berserker Pig or War Pig or something. He's broken. He used to have an axe. Comics fans out there, eagle-eyed comics fans, might know that this is Cerebus. Am I saying his name right? I think my neighbor gave me this one because he was broken, and I took a shot at painting him, or maybe he was painted when I got him, but for whatever reason, this one has traveled with me for my whole life. Now, when I got older, I was able to make my own decisions. I did not ever start playing Dungeons and Dragons. That ship had kind of sailed. I always loved the artwork, though. And by the way, there's a great documentary called Eye of the Beholder. I think it's on Amazon right now. Might be Netflix. Just look for it. It's basically about the early days of TSR and how they developed their art style and how that art style defined the company going forward. It's a very cool documentary. It's got some incredible artwork in it and interviews with some of the artists that are still alive. It's very cool. So take my word for it. If you like nerdy stuff like that at all, it's a good way to spend your time for an hour or however long the thing is. Okay. So when I got older, I started playing Warhammer, because that was a game that used miniatures. You could paint miniatures and you could fight on the table with them. Really, I was just into painting them. Didn't really play the game a lot. Wasn't good at it. We played sometimes, but it took a long time. It was frustrating. You'd play with your friends and everyone would end up arguing and you'd be like, oh, it's so much trouble. But I loved sitting around and painting those things. It was a lot of fun. I just like looking at miniatures. Part of the reason why I've been so into coins lately is because the artistry of these coins, it does remind me a little bit of the love that I have for miniatures and all these different designs, and especially being able to find the flaws and stuff. For some reason, that kind of obsessing about these small things, it touches the same feeling with me. But miniatures are something I love to spend time with. However, I don't have time or money for that in my life. But I found a way to get to enjoy miniatures and still have it be part of my treasure hunting and reselling kind of life that I have. Every once in a while, I'll find a collection. Someone will have a collection. Maybe I'll find them on Craigslist. Or one of my storage guys will get a collection out of a storage unit and say, hey, I've got some of that nerdy stuff you like. You want to make me a deal? You want to buy these from me? You want to sell them for me, split the money? What do you want to do? So I have spent a lot of time going through piles and piles of miniatures, nerdy gaming miniatures and identifying what make and manufacturer they are, model numbers, and how much they're worth, breaking them back up into their original sets and selling them online. So what I thought I would do is go through my process of sourcing and selling a batch of miniatures. And it just so happened that recently I saw this great auction on eBay. It's exactly the kind of thing I look for. The price is right for the number of miniatures, and I can see, just from my knowledge of what it is that I look for, that there's some really good pieces in this. Now, I am going to say it that way, really good pieces, because some of these things are valuable if you know what you're looking for. And not incredibly valuable, but when you break it down into individual sales, you can usually make more money than you spend getting these things. I'll go into that a little bit more detail as the video goes on. But I bought these miniatures on eBay. eBay is a pretty good source to find miniatures sometimes. You have to deal with shipping, and that can be a real problem with miniatures. And a lot of times people will, even when they're selling in a lot, the price is just too high to make it worthwhile. This price was right, though. And like I always do, I contacted the seller and I said, hey, I just bought these miniatures from you. Please make sure that when you ship them, they aren't touching each other loose in the box so that they move against each other and damage themselves on the way here. Because these things are heavy. They're made of lead or metal-like lead. And they bend easily, they break easily. We had a little back and forth. It was funny. There was a lot of pushback at first. Like, it's not really worth it for me to do that. And I was nice about it. And I said, look, I just please be careful. I'm just asking you to just wrap them tight at the very least. So I got a message back from the seller that said, hey, I have more of these. And they're the same type. I just hadn't listed them yet. I didn't know exactly what they were. Are you interested in buying more? I said, if they're the same type, I'd be interested. Let me know when you put it up. A couple days later, I got a message that said, I made an auction just for you. I'm putting it up in an hour. It's cheap, and I can add it to your current item that you won and ship them both together, ship them the way you want me to. He throws the auction up an hour later, and it's even better. It's this one. And it's perfect. RAL PARTHA stuff. It's what I look for. This is the right era of RAL PARTHA that I look for. So I bought it. He shipped them both to me. And what I'm going to do today is show you me receiving the box, going through the box, whether or not I was happy with his shipping. And then we'll go through, we'll identify the miniatures, and I will show you basically how I break them up and value them and decide what to do with them. I'll show you how I find out what they are if I don't know. Some of that stuff can be kind of hard to find, but there's a lot of collector sites where you can get the information. So I'll go through all of that, and yeah, we'll get to it here in a minute. So just realize I probably don't have a cutaway to the next scene where I'm going to go to the door and get the package. Actually happened earlier today and I already filmed it, but when you're watching it, it'll be edited like it happened after this. It's just the magic of filmmaking. All right, what do we have here? Ah, a package for me. Those must be my miniatures. Okay, I marked out the addresses just to maintain privacy for everybody. Let's take a look at this box. It's got fragile on the side. I like that. It's a bunch of miniatures. I hope they're packed well. We can see that the box did get some crush damage in shipping. That's one of the reasons why I definitely like things to be packed well. It's a big deal for me. I harp on it a lot. Get my hands on it here. Let's see. There's not a lot of movement inside the box, and for metal miniatures, that's a big deal. I think these were probably packed up pretty well, but we're not really going to know until we open it and take a look. Okay, let's get this box open and see what it contains. Alright, so you can see metal poking out here. These are wrapped in paper towel. They are, and listen, this is better than a lot of packages I've gotten. It's worse than some. The miniatures are still hitting each other. They're still rubbing against each other in there. You can hear that. Whenever I buy one of these sets of miniatures, I usually ask the seller to be very careful to package these things so that they don't move against each other when they ship. And this is actually what I'm talking about. That's just death. These things, they vibrate, they move, and there's little tiny pieces of metal, and they're scraping against each other, they're bending against each other, things break. You do damage that way. They should be individually wrapped. These are little works of art. Anyway, that said, this is actually better than a lot of them. So let's open these up, hope they're not too damaged, and see what we've got. Let's take the one with the metal sticking out. You know, I do actually kind of appreciate that there was some tape holding these pieces. Okay. Even though the wing is bent from the shipping, both sides, we do have a nice miniature that can be bent back into shape, and it's not broken at least. Good example of damage that, I didn't help it, but for example, these wings are not in the best shape, but okay, well, we'll do what we can to salvage this one. I'm not 100% sure this one wasn't like this in the picture for the auction, so I'll have to take a look at that and see. Okay. All right, so now I'm really not happy. Pull this paper off to find just bags of loose miniatures shipped. Just no concern. I mean, I just put into plastic bags and shipped. I specifically asked for this not to be done this way, and it was. So there will definitely be bent and broken miniatures in here. And this one is bent so badly that it has bent into the plastic bag holding it. Take a look at that spear. How badly that was damaged in shipping. And I want to point out, this person did take more care than other people do. Some people will literally just throw these miniatures loose in a loose bag. These bags were at least tightened to the point that they didn't move as much. So, yeah. A little effort still helps, still gets you damaged stuff. But it helps a little. That one is horrifically bent, and it was not that way in the picture. We'll try to bend it back without breaking the legs off. Same with this one, if you can see it. Okay. One of these was broken, I believe, in the auction. I now have two that are broken. That's a shipping issue, I believe. Okay. So this was everything I got. Really not happy at the damage to these ogres or whatever they are. They are in really bad shape, really damaged compared to what was advertised. But they bore the brunt, I think, of the shipping. That's most of the stuff that I'm not really going to be able to fix. Oh well. Great centaurs. Some other cool ones. Grell, I think these are called. I know these are harpies. Never seen these before. These are cool. Fix this guy up a little. Just some great wing stuff, some larger miniatures. I'm happy. I'm happy with it. For the money, I think this was a good buy. And I think I'm going to be able to turn it around and really make it worth my time. Plus, I'm going to enjoy the time I spend with this stuff, which is kind of why I do it. So, All right, I'm going to break these down, identify them, and get them ready for auction. I'll show you how I do that. Okay, so I've sorted all the miniatures, arranged them in their proper sets, cleaned them up, fixed them up where necessary, and taken photos of the individual sets. Here's some of them, not everything, the ones that took the best pictures and the lightest backgrounds. I thought that would make a decent background for what we're about to do. Now that I have them separated, I need to figure out exactly what make and model numbers these things are so I can turn around and sell them on eBay. Now, I told you earlier that these were mostly RAL Partha miniatures, and that's true. But let's say you don't know anything about miniatures and you get a batch like this and you want to know how to identify them. You'll do a lot of the same steps as what I'm about to do. So the very first thing you're going to want to do is turn your miniature upside down and look on the bottom of the base and see what it says. Almost all of these miniatures say RAL Partha. I think you can see here. It's hard to see. It's small. You might have to get a loop or something, but in the larger ones like this one, you can read RAL Partha Enterprises and the date usually. I think that says 1994. This Griffin miniature is an older one from '87. It has the flatter base, and the RAL Partha is actually a little easier to read, even with the primer on there. And then this one is RAFM. That's a different company altogether. This RAFM miniature is the only non-RAL Partha miniature I'm going to be selling out of this batch, and I'll explain why at the end. Okay, so we'll start with this guy. I know he's a stone giant. I also know that he's RAL Partha. So where do I go to find information? Back in the day, they issued catalogs, and you could identify your miniatures in those catalogs. And if you can get a hold of those catalogs now, there's still a great wealth of information. The easiest way to identify them is to use this website, the Lost Minis Wiki. I'll put a link down in the description of this video so you can go check it out for yourself. But what this is like a clearinghouse of pages of miniature companies, mostly older ones. This would be the 70s through the early 2000s for the most part. And here, there's a section for RAL Partha. So let's click that. And here we have the master page for RAL Partha miniatures. This includes all kinds of information about the company. And, when they were in business, when they went out of business, they started up again, it looks like. That's pretty cool. Although they're not making these miniatures anymore. These AD&D miniatures that I have are long out of production. So, I happen to know that this guy right here is part of the AD&D Monsters line. So let's click that. Now here you see a big list of miniatures. You don't need to know the name necessarily because you can scroll down and look at the thumbnail images of your figures. And here is the Stone Giant. 11403 Stone Giant. You can clearly see that's our miniature. So that's the guy we want to get the information on. So I verified that that's the Stone Giant. Now let's get a spreadsheet going. These are the combined RAL Partha lots that I bought in March of 2020. Number 1, we'll do Stone Giant, and we'll just start putting these other minis in here. Okay, so right below the Stone Giant, we've got the Ogre Mage. Here we see there were 2 versions of the Ogre Mage. We've got the one with the victim in the left hand, and normally he has a sword. I'm missing the sword, so when I do the auction for this, I'll want to list that. So we'll put him in the spreadsheet and move on. Next up for number 3, we've got the Mind Flayer. Hey, Stranger Things creature. Their version was a little different, but it was based on this, the Mind Flayer. Excellent figure. Okay, moving on. Number 4. What do we have here? Chimera. It's not a chimera as much as it might look like that. I know this miniature doesn't look a lot like mine. Mine's got this black primer, which, yeah. All right, moving on. Marid. Big genie miniature. It's a nice large miniature. He's right below Chimera, so they're coming fast and furious, and they've been easy to find so far. Oh, and right below that, lesser golems. Flesh golem and clay golem. All right, we have those. We're moving on. What are these? Gnolls. All right, so that's definitely those miniatures, although all the weapons are not there. One has a shield, everything else is missing, so I'll have to note that in the auction, but these are those miniatures. So we'll put those in, and now this is a rare one. This is one you don't see very often because he was discontinued early. Catoblepas? I don't necessarily know how to pronounce it, but it's a cool miniature. I've never had that one before, so it's been fun to get to check it out up close and personal. Moving on. Harpies. Okay. This Harpies set, I've got 2 or 3 of them. I don't have the one that was kicking, which is too bad, but all right, so I've got 2. Let's see what's next. Is this a griffin? It's a griffin. All right, yep, definitely the same model. Mine has white primer on it. Okay. What is this thing? Beholder, some sort of Beholder Kin. I think it was a set. Yeah, I don't have both of them, but this is clearly the one on the right, or yeah, on the right of the picture here. And it's got all the tentacle eyes. So Beholder Kin, one of them. Manticore, right below the Beholder Kin, so easy to find. And again, this is definitely the right miniature. So we'll put him in. See if we can find this guy. What is he? A skeletal giant. That is a cool miniature. Also the first time I've had this one. Let's put him in the sheet. Move on to this one. All right. I've had this miniature a number of times. I've got 2 of them. One with primer and one without. I'm not sure how you pronounce it. Rakshasa? Rakshasa. Okay. I may have said that wrong. If I've pronounced it wrong, do let me know. Moving on to the Hammer Golem. Okay. Definitely that miniature. These are the ones I hadn't seen before. I've never had these before. Lycanthropes. So I guess those are like werewolves, except these are werebadger, wereboar, and werebear. And right below them, we have Grell. So like some sort of brains floating on top of tentacles. Sort of twisted squid thing. Very pleasant. Very nice. Pop those in. All right. This guy. Ormir. Another one that might be hard to pronounce. Ormer. Could be Ormer. Could be Ormir. There's 2 R's at the end. What am I supposed to do with that? Anyway, some sort of 4-armed slug. These guys are quite rare. Gibberlings. There's supposed to be 4 of them. I have 3. Luckily, I have all the proper arm pieces for them. So I've got 3 of the 4. Gibberlings. Now, I start looking for this guy. I think I'm done with the AD&D monsters. I haven't found this figure in there. So we'll need to leave AD&D monsters, head back out to the main page, and then we could look around for a long time for which grouping this one would be in. But I can tell you one of the first ones you should always check is personalities and things that go bump in the night. It's another classic line. Tons and tons of miniatures in this one. Lots of like really good earlier versions of the ones that we just saw in the AD&D monsters line. Down here, click Giant Griffin. Yep. That's our guy. Giant Griffin. Let's put him into the sheet. Okay, this one's a little weird. I know from previous experience that these beast creatures are companion animals from the Beastmasters set. Let's click on that. So each set came with a human figure and then a creature. So I'm just going to combine these together since I don't have any other pieces of the set. This is the Cave Lion. I've got 2 of those. And then down here, we got Hyanodon. Hyanodon? Is that how you say that? Maybe. I don't even know what Hyanodon is, but he goes in the list along with 2 Cave Lions. Moving on. Now this one looks like it would be one of those companion animals, but it's not. It's a Shadowrun miniature. It's a shapeshifter. And I know this because I've seen it before, but I'm going to show you the secret to identifying Shadowrun miniatures. The key is the base. If you look at the base here, it's got like a brick pattern instead of just the ground. If you've got a miniature that's a RAL Partha miniature that has like a brick floor surface or a modern looking road as the base, it's very likely Shadowrun because Shadowrun is like a futuristic game. It doesn't take place in a fantasy history or past. So if you see those bases, look in the Shadowrun section. Moving on, this is a Masters of Chaos. Chaos Deathmaster. Oh, perfect. That's easy enough. We'll just add him. Now this one is over in the Birthright section. AD&D Birthright, another type of game for Dungeons and Dragons. This is the Lamia. Put it in. Now, these were from Planescape. These were miniatures from a box set. And if I scroll down in the Planescape section, I find the Powers of Conflict box. And I look at these, and clearly these are the same miniatures I have here. What you can't tell from these pictures is just how much bigger that Titan miniature is. But that's him. And you can see his spear isn't supposed to be that bent, but then again, neither is mine anymore. Now, not all the miniatures are here. Cat Lord is not here. And this bird that goes on this kind of giant centaur guy is not here. Weirdly, I've had both of those miniatures in the past and none of the others. But anyway, throw that in and we'll move on. Right below that, Factol of the Mercy Killers. Not sure what a Factol is, but there's a bunch of them in this game. Put him in. Moving down to Armanites. An Armanite is a demonic centaur, I guess. These guys are complete with their shields, so that's excellent. Put them in. Now, this one is in the section where FASA purchased RAL Partha and made their own strange lines of miniatures for a while. He's a troll. He's part of the Troll Leader and Shaman set. Unfortunately, when I look here, I see that mine is incomplete. It doesn't have the skull on top of the staff, which is a bummer. Copy it in. All right, I got my broken ones. They're right below. Troll Rock Throwers. These are definitely them. So I got 2 sets, but none of them are in good shape, so oh well. Then we get into an issue where I want to try to find these miniatures. They're RAL Partha. Probably part of this FASA later group. But it's kind of hard to get information on these. There's a lot of blank spaces. A lot of stuff didn't make it into the database yet. But when I scroll down far enough, oh, look at this. Beastman Centaur Cavalry. And look, that looks just like mine. And that one looks just like mine. It doesn't even have a weapon. And the secret here is these pictures did not exist in the database. I took the photos and put them in. I was able to verify elsewhere that those were the proper miniatures. It's just that no one had actually put a photo up. Okay, so we're onto this griffin, but this isn't even RAL Partha. I've got to go out of RAL Partha all the way, come down to RAFM, which is just right above RAL Partha. Look around and see which one would a griffin be in. Probably, what, mystical creatures? Is that what that says? Yeah. Oh, and perfectly. There it is. It's not a griffin, it's a hippogriff. And it also is incomplete. It doesn't have that piece, but that is definitely the same miniature. So that is my final sellable set. Going up here, let's take a look what we've got in the end. I ended up with 32 sets. I spent a total of $148.78 to buy those 32 sets, which means each set cost me $4.65. That's pretty good. Some of these sets are going to sell for a fair amount more than that, so I will be able to make some money as long as I sell everything. Now, there were 4 more sets that I was not able to identify. These weird, I think they're fallen angels. They're RAL Partha. They don't have their wings. I didn't find catalog numbers. I have no idea what they are. These beasts, they're 1996 RAL Partha slot figures. Could not find them. Don't know what they are. They're interesting. This one is a Reaper miniature. Sorry, it's out of focus. You can usually find Reaper miniatures on their webpage. I could not find a listing for this one. It's some kind of undead. If you can figure out what it is, let me know in the comments. And then pretty much the coolest miniature in the whole batch, I think. This giant. So rad. It seems like it's a Citadel figure, a Games Workshop miniature. It has their kind of design style. It's in pieces the way theirs are. It kind of is in a position that a lot of their miniatures seem to be in, a lot of their giants and trolls. This one has a sheep on his belt. It's kind of hard to see, but I have not been able to find out what this is yet. It's a giant of some sort. If anyone knows what this is, please let me know. It's super cool. All right, so that's basically everything from this buy. Well, if you've made it this far, thank you for going through all of that with me. You must really like miniatures too, or at least be interested for some reason. One of the things that I should point out, and I may have mentioned this along the way when I was opening the box of miniatures, but I'll make it very clear right now. There's not a big profit margin here. I'm not going to make a lot of money on these. To be honest, this is one of the ways that I spend my time that's probably half recreation. I just like these things. I like spending time with them, but I don't have the money or the time to have them as a hobby. So by getting them, identifying them, turning them, selling them, taking the photos, spending the time with them, I get to enjoy them. And then they go and someone else gets to enjoy them and I get money. I kind of feel like that's a good way to do things, even if it's not the most profitable thing in the world. So anyway, if that sounds like something you're into, I encourage you to get into it. It's a lot of fun. Please like and subscribe. I'll be doing a lot more videos like this, coin collecting videos, treasure hunting videos of all sorts. I've got a lot of things coming. So hit that bell. I'll let you know when I've got videos coming out. I think that's what that bell does, right? People just say hit the bell. Ring the bell. I'm just never entirely sure how to end these things. Have you got like a collection of miniatures? Like cool 80s or 90s, RAL PARTHA, Grenadier, Games Workshop stuff for Warhammer 40k, metal miniatures, cool stuff like that, painted or unpainted, I don't care. If you want to part with them, send me an email. I might be interested. I might not. You probably want too much money for them. And this video has told you what it is I'm going to do with them eventually. But you know what? If you do want to part with them and you know what I'm going to do with them, you want to give me a good price, get in touch. We'll see what we can do. All right. See you next time.